Judge Frank Caprio just accused Police Chief Robert Manuso of threatening a sitting judge live on television. In front of 30 witnesses, Manuso didn't deny it, he doubled down. Anger exploded as a police chief claimed the power to decide which evidence matters and which disappears. So when the man enforcing the law believes he stands above it, who is left to stop him? The cameras are live when Judge Frank Caprio drops his voice and detonates the room. Police Chief Robert Manuso, he says, eyes locked, you just threatened a sitting judge in front of this council. No introduction, no explanation. A sharp inhale cuts through the chamber. The statement is not framed as suspicion, not as interpretation, but as fact. Live, recorded, irreversible. The kind of accusation that ends careers before the sentence finishes echoing. Manuso leans back and finally speaks. I stated reality, he says flatly. His attorney shouts objection, but Caprio cuts through it. Did I ask your lawyer? Silence snaps back. Manuso continues anyway. People like you don't run this city. The words land harder than a denial ever could. No retreat, no clarification. A police chief on live television openly challenging judicial authority and daring anyone in the room to stop him. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. That's what makes it lethal. So let's be precise, he says. You're not denying the threat. You're defending it. He gestures to the screen as timestamps appear. This hearing now asks only one question. He pauses. When law enforcement decides it answers to itself, does the law still exist or only power? The defense attorney snaps to his feet. This is a verbal misunderstanding, he says. Caprio doesn't let him finish. Stop, the judge cuts in. No one misunderstands a sentence when their family is named as leverage. He points to the transcript on screen. You didn't misspeak. You calculated. The lawyer protests. Caprio fires back. Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. He turns to Manuso. You didn't stumble into a threat. You delivered it cleanly, calmly, and on purpose. The room stiffens. The defense realizes the judge isn't negotiating. He's dissecting. Manuso leans forward, voice sharp. I describe reality. That's how power works. Caprio's reply is immediate, contemptuous. No, that's how bullies work. Manuso scoffs. You live in rules. I live in consequences. Caprio's eyes harden. Rules create consequences. You confuse authority with immunity. He gestures to the oath projected behind him. You swore to uphold the law, not bend it with threats. Manuso snaps back. You wouldn't last a week doing my job. Caprio answers coldly. I wouldn't last a second breaking it. The insult lands. Manuso's jaw tightens. No rebuttal follows. Live feeds explode. Commentators stop speculating and start replaying admissions. Caprio raises his voice for the first time. This isn't rhetoric, it's testimony. Manuso smirks. Public outrage means nothing. Caprio steps closer. It means you spoke without fear. He taps the screen. Recorded calls, meeting logs, timelines that match your words. Manuso snaps, prove intent. Caprio replies, lethal and slow. Intent is when a man threatens a judge and calls it normal. Silence slams the room. One question burns through every camera lens. Is this still defense or a confession unraveling in real time? Caprio doesn't hesitate. He looks straight at Manuso and asks slowly, deliberately, did you order interference with evidence in the Rodriguez case? No preamble, no cushion. Manuso exhales through his nose. I don't involve myself in individual investigations, he replies. Caprio tilts his head. But investigations don't erase themselves. Manuso stiffens. I oversee operations, not files. Caprio answers immediately, voice low, controlled. You oversee the people who decide whether files survive. The screen lights up with internal access logs. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. Evidence disappeared while you were in charge. That isn't coincidence. It's command. Caprio moves closer, tightening the frame. When did the footage vanish? Manuso pauses. I don't recall. Caprio doesn't react. Who had access? Another pause. I don't remember. A murmur spreads. Caprio gestures to the monitor. This video was deleted hours after a federal preservation request. He clicks again. 3 authorization keys existed. 3. He looks back at Manuso. Yours was one of them. Manuso snaps, you're assuming intent. Caprio answers without hesitation. Intent follows control. He lets the silence stretch. And you controlled the door the evidence walked through. Caprio straightens, voice turning colder. I don't remember is not testimony. It's avoidance. Manuso scoffs. You're criminalizing memory. Caprio fires back sharp and final. No, I'm criminalizing disappearance. Fragmented footage appears partial frames missing seconds. Caprio points to it. Data doesn't forget itself. He locks eyes with Manuso. Someone removed the truth, then hid behind amnesia. He pauses, letting the implication breathe. Every time you claim not to remember, you narrow the field. Caprio's voice drops. Because evidence doesn't lie. People do. The tension in the chamber has been tightening for minutes, like a wire stretched too far. Manuso shifts in his chair, jaw clenched, patience visibly thinning. When he spoke again, the restraint was gone. Let's stop pretending this is academic, he says, voice sharp, echoing through the microphones. Not every piece of evidence deserves to be chased. The reaction is immediate. A ripple of disbelief moves through the room. Caprio doesn't interrupt. He lets the words settle, lets the weight of them be felt. Then he responded, measured, almost quiet. You're telling this council that evidence becomes optional. Manuso leans forward. I'm telling you, reality doesn't wait for paperwork. Caprio's eyes are hardened. Who gave you the authority to decide which truths are worth segueing? Manuso answers without hesitation. Experience. 25 years of it. Caprio gestures toward the monitors as departmental directives appear. Experience does not outrank procedure. Manuso scoffs. Procedure doesn't stop bullets. Caprio counters, voice firm. It stops abuse. Manuso shook his head. You don't understand the pressure. Caprio replies. Pressure doesn't rewrite the law. He points again to the logs. This evidence disappeared after it became inconvenient. Manuso snaps back. We move fast. Caprio responds. Fast enough to erase facts. The exchange no longer feels like testimony. It feels like exposure. Manuso isn't defending an action. He's defending a belief. And everyone in the room feels it. This isn't a slip. It's a philosophy being spoken out loud for the first time. Manuso straighteners, emboldened by his own candor. My job is to protect the city, he says. I prioritize safety over technicalities. Caprio doesn't hesitate. Justice is not a technicality. Manuso fires back. Tell that to victims waiting for results. Caprio answers evenly. Victims deserve truth, not shortcuts. Manuso raises his voice. If we treat every file like a sacred object, criminals walk. Caprio gestures toward the oath projected behind him. That oath doesn't include exceptions for convenience. Manuso laughed bitterly. You live in theory. I live in consequences. Caprio steps closer to the bench microphone. Consequences without restraint are tyranny. He taps the screen, pulls up internal emails. These were not mistakes. They were decisions. Manuso pushes back. Decisions made under pressure? Caprio replies, pressure reveals priorities. Manuso says, I chose the city. Caprio responds, you chose control. The room feels heavy now. Each exchange strips away another layer. Manuso's argument is no longer defensive, it's declarative. You can't run a department by chasing every allegation, he insists. Caprio's response is cold. You can't run one by burying them either. He points to the timeline. This file disappeared hours after you flagged it. Manuso mutters, coincidences happen. Caprio answers. Coincidences don't follow orders. The clash is no longer procedural. It's ideological. One side argument necessity. The other insists on limits. And the audience realize something unsettling. Manuso isn't arguing that the system failed. He's argued that it worked exactly as he intended. The breaking point comes without drama, without shouting. Manuso leans into the microphone, voice steady, almost casual. I decide what qualifies as evidence. The room explodes, shocked voices, frantic whispers, a producer gesturing to cut. Caprio raises his hand, silencing the chaos. Say it again, he commands. Manuso doesn't flinch. I decide what qualifies. Caprio nods slowly, as if confirming something long suspected. So you appoint yourself the gatekeeper of truth? Manuso answers bluntly. Someone has come. Caprio gestures toward the screen as policy language scrolls. Show me where the law grants you that power. Manuso says nothing. Caprio continues voice cutting. You didn't claim evidence was flawed. You claimed it was optional. He points to the fragmented footage now displayed missing seconds corrupted frames. This is the footprint of your doctrine. Manuso snaps. Those gaps don't change reality. Caprio responded. They manufacture one. He steps forward. Evidence exists to restrain power. Manuso scoffs. I won't apologize for keeping the city safe. Caprio replies devastatingly calm. Safety without law is fear with authority. He turns to the council. What you've just heard is not confusion. It's admission. Manuso protests. You're twisting my words. Caprio answers, I'm documenting them. He looks back at Manuso. When one man decides what evidence matters, the law becomes optional. He pauses, letting the implications sink in. And the question now isn't whether this happened. Caprio's voice lowers. It's how long it's been happening before today. The silence after Manuso's admission doesn't last. He shifts forward and something changes in his expression. Calculation replacing defiance. You want evidence? He says, voice dropping. Let's discuss the Parker shooting. Caprio's eyes narrow. What about it? Manuso pulls a folder from beneath his briefcase. Body camera footage, 18 minutes. He slides it across. The public saw 40 seconds. Edited. Approved by your office. The accusation lands hard. Caprio doesn't flinch. Context required editing. The family requested, Manuso interrupts. The family requested, or you decided what they should see? He taps the folder. Minute 7 shows the officer retreating. Minute 12 shows the suspect advancing with a weapon. But those didn't make your version. Caprio's jaw tightens. That footage was reviewed by independent analysts. Manuso laughs bitter. Independent. They were hired by the city attorney who reports to the mayor who appointed you. He leans forward. You talk about evidence standards, but you curate reality just like I do. You just call it judicial discretion. The room shifts uncomfortably. Caprio responds measured. Discretion serves transparency. Your deletions serve concealment. Manuso shakes his head. You edit to protect narratives. I edit to protect operations. Same action, different vocabulary. The comparison is obscene and Caprio knows it. The Parker family deserved truth, he says. Manuso fires back. They deserve safety. That officer is still on the street because you selectively disclosed evidence that supported prosecution, then withdrew when the full context emerged. He pulls out a second document. Here's your office's internal memo. Footage sections 7-12 may complicate public perception. He reads it aloud. Recommend limiting release to incident timeline only. Caprio's face hardens. That's case strategy, not suppression. Manuso's smile is cold. Tell me the difference. The challenge hangs between them. Both men weaponizing evidence. Both claiming higher purpose. Caprio breaks the silence. The difference is accountability. My decisions face appellate review. Manuso counters immediately. And mine face riots. You work in theory, I work in streets where your rulings create chaos. He gestures to the monitors. Every time you release partial evidence, you start fires I have to control. But when I withhold evidence to prevent violence, I'm corrupt. His voice rises. You want to talk about selective truth? Start with your own courtroom. Caprio stands both hands on the bench. The Rodriguez case, he says, voice tight with controlled anger. You deleted dashboard camera footage showing excessive force. Manuso doesn't deny it. I preserved operational security. Caprio's eyes flash. You destroyed evidence of police brutality. Manuso leans forward, matching his intensity. I prevented that footage from becoming a recruiting video for cop killers. He pulls up his phone, scrolls, projects an image onto the screen. This is Officer Mendez, killed 3 months after the Rodriguez video leaked. The shooter posted that video online with the caption, "This is why." The image freezes the room, a memorial photo, a grieving family. Manuso's voice drops. You release evidence without consequence. I bury it to save lives. Caprio's response is immediate, sharp. You don't get to decide. Manuso interrupts, furious now. Someone has to. You sit in chambers making rulings about officers you've never met on streets you've never walked. I make split-second choices that keep this city from burning. He points at the screen. That's the cost of your transparency. A widow. 3 orphaned kids. Caprio's voice cuts like steel. Don't you dare use Mendez's death to justify corruption. Manuso slams his hand on the table. And don't you dare pretend your principles don't have body counts. The room erupts in shocked murmurs. Caprio raises his voice over the chaos. Evidence isn't optional based on convenience. Manuso shouts over him. It's not convenience, it's survival. You want every camera angle public, fine. Let's release the Rodriguez footage unedited. All 6 minutes, including the part where he's screaming he'll kill the next cop he sees, including the part where he reaches for his waistband 3 times. Let's show the jury what you decided they shouldn't see. Caprio goes still. That footage was excluded because Manuso doesn't let him finish. Because it contradicted your narrative. Because it made the officer look justified. Because it would have killed your case. He pulls out another document, email chains, highlighted sections. Here's your prosecutor telling the tech team, we don't need the full recording. The arrest segment is sufficient. That's not evidence management, Judge. That's evidence manipulation. The accusation reverses the power dynamic. Caprio's voice hardens. Context matters in court presentation. Manuso pounces. And it doesn't matter in police operations you curate. I curate. The only difference is you face a defense attorney, I face armed suspects. He gestures broadly. Every decision you make is reviewed in air-conditioned appellate courts. Mine are reviewed in alleys at 2 a.m., where hesitation means death. Caprio's response is ice-cold precision. A system built on fear is not law enforcement. It's tyranny with a badge. Manuso shakes his head, almost pitying. And a system built on your version of justice is chaos with a gavel. He stands now, matching Caprio's posture. You talk about evidence standards like they're sacred, but you selectively apply them. When it serves prosecution, you allow hearsay. When it protects defendants, you demand ironclad proof. He pulls up court transcripts on screen. State v. Morrison. You admitted testimony from a witness who recanted. State v. Chen. You excluded forensic evidence because the chain of custody had a 2-hour gap. Caprio interrupts. Those were individual case determinations. Manuso cuts him off. Based on ideology, not consistency. You let evidence in when it supports your worldview. You exclude it when it doesn't. He scrolls through more files. 73 cases last year. In 61 of them, you ruled in favor of limiting police evidence while expanding prosecution latitude. He looks up. That's not impartiality. That's activism. The accusation shifts the entire hearing. Caprio's voice drops dangerous. You're conflating judicial discretion with evidence destruction. Manuso fires back. I'm exposing your double standard. You condemn me for making judgment calls under pressure, then you make judgment calls from the bench and call it jurisprudence. He points at the oath projected behind Caprio. That oath says equal application of law. Show me where you've applied evidence rules equally to both sides. Caprio's jaw clenches. I follow procedure. Manuso laughs harsh. Procedure you interpret through a filter. Every ruling favoring defendants, you cite constitutional protections. Every ruling limiting police testimony, you cite reliability standards. But when prosecutors need flexibility, suddenly procedure is elastic. He leans forward. You and I both shape evidence to serve our missions. I protect public safety. You protect defendants. We both call it justice. Caprio's response is quite lethal. The difference is my mission is constitutional. Yours is personal. Manuso's eyes narrow. Constitutional, you mean political. Every evidence ruling you makes signals to voters that you're tough on police. Every suppressed body cam video builds your reform credentials. He gestures to the cameras. You're not pursuing truth. You're pursuing re-election. And you sacrifice officer safety to get there. The final accusation hangs in the air. 2 men, 2 philosophies, both claiming evidence, both claiming justice, both accusing the other of corrupting the system they swore to serve. The question burning through every camera lens if both the judge and the police chief manipulate truth to serve their version of order who protects the law itself. The argument has been escalating for minutes, voices rising, accusations sharpening. Then Manuso says something that changes everything. Your daughter, he begins, and the room goes dead silent. Not quiet, dead. The kind of silence that precedes catastrophe. Caprio's face drains of color. What did you say? Manuso continues as if he hasn't just detonated a bomb. Christina, 26, works at Providence General, night shift, drives a blue Honda Civic. He recites the details with casual precision, the way someone reads a grocery list. Parks in the east lot, usually arrives around 10:45 p.m. The attorney beside him lurches forward, grabbing Manuso's arm. Don't! Manuso shakes him off without breaking eye contact with the judge. I'm simply demonstrating the quality of my record keeping. The room erupts. Council members shouting. Camera operators frozen in shock. Someone yells to cut the feed. Caprio raises one hand and somehow the chaos stops. When he speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper, but it cuts through every microphone in the chamber. Repeat what you just said. Manuso leans back, spreading his hands. I said your daughter works at Providence General. That's public information, Judge. LinkedIn, hospital directory, nothing classified. Caprio's hands grip the bench edge until his knuckles go white. You just recited her schedule, her vehicle, her parking location? Manuso shrugs. Good police work means knowing details. I know everyone's details. The threat couldn't be clearer if he'd held up a weapon. The attorney is on his feet now, face flushed, gesturing wildly. Chief Manuso, as your counsel, I am ordering you to stop talking. Manuso waves him away like brushing off a fly. Sit down. I'm making a point about information gathering. He turns back to Caprio. You want to question my evidence methods? Fine, let's discuss how thoroughly I document everything that matters. The phrasing is deliberate. Everything that matters. Not facts, not cases, people, targets, leverage points. Caprio's voice when he responds is something none of them have heard before, rage compressed into surgical precision. You just threatened my child on live television. Manuso's expression doesn't change. I stated observable facts. If you interpret that as a threat, that says more about your conscience than my intentions. The gaslighting is textbook delivered with the confidence of someone who's done this before. Deny the threat while making it impossible to ignore. Christina parks in a well-lit area. Manuso continues, each word calculated. Security cameras cover most of the lot. Most, not all. There are blind spots, of course, east corner, behind the dumpsters. But I'm sure she's careful. The attorney has gone pale, frantically scribbling notes that will never matter. This has crossed from testimony into something unredeemable. A council member stands, voice shaking. This is witness intimidation. This is... Manuso doesn't even glance at him. This is me answering questions about my information network. The judge asked about my evidence. I'm showing him exactly how detailed my evidence gets. He pulls out his phone, scrolls deliberately, then puts it away without showing the screen. The gesture is pure theater, implying photographs, surveillance documentation. Real or fabricated doesn't matter. The implication alone is the weapon. Caprio hasn't moved, hasn't blinked. When he finally speaks, his voice carries the weight of something irrevocable being decided. You made a mistake. Manuso tilts his head. Did I? Caprio's response is quiet final. You just gave me everything I need. Caprio stands slowly, deliberately, every movement calculated. When he speaks, his voice fills the chamber with cold authority. Chief Robert Manuso, you have just crossed from testimony into criminal conduct. Manuso scoffs. I mentioned public information. Caprio interrupts, voice rising for the first time. You detailed my daughter's location, schedule, and vehicle with the explicit purpose of inducing fear. He gestures to the transcript now scrolling on screen. You didn't mention her employment in passing. You itemized surveillance. Manuso starts to respond. Caprio's voice cracks like a whip. I am speaking. The command freezes Manuso mid-breath. Caprio continues, each word deliberate. Title 18, Section 1512, Witness Intimidation. You have committed it in front of 30 witnesses and multiple recording devices. He taps the screen where legal code appears. The statute requires demonstrating intent to influence official proceedings through threats. He looks at Manuso. You just provided both elements within a single statement. Manuso's attorney is on his feet, voice desperate. Judge Caprio, my client was simply Caprio cuts him off without looking away from Manuso. Your client just threatened a sitting judge's family member to obstruct these proceedings? Save your explanations for his criminal defense attorney. The shift is seismic. This is no longer a hearing. It's the moment before an arrest. Manuso feels it too. His posture changes, shoulders squaring. You're overreacting too. Caprio slams his hand on the bench. The sound echoes like a gunshot. Overreacting. His voice is trembling now, not with fear, but with barely contained fury. You named my daughter. You described where she works, where she parks, what she drives. You detailed security gaps in her location. He leans forward. That's not information sharing. That's tactical reconnaissance delivered as intimidation. Manuso tries a different approach, voice softening. Judge, I understand emotions are high, but Caprio's laugh is harsh, humorless. Emotions. You think this is emotional? He gestures to the monitors where timestamps are being highlighted. This is evidence. Your statement at 14:37:22 naming my daughter, 14:37:35 describing her vehicle, 14:37:48 identifying security vulnerabilities at her workplace. He looks directly into the cameras. The record will show this was not spontaneous. Each detail was delivered with deliberate pacing, each fact chosen for maximum impact. The attorney makes one last attempt. The chief has apologized. Manuso interrupts his own lawyer. I haven't apologized. I don't need to. The statement stuns everyone. Even his attorney goes silent. Manuso continues, voice hardening. I explain that knowledge is power. If the judge feels threatened by my competence, that's his problem. Caprio's response is ice. Competence is gathering intelligence. Intimidation is weaponizing it against a judge's family. He turns to the officers stationed at the exits. Clear the gallery. This proceeding is now a criminal matter. Manuso's face flushes red. You can't. Caprio's voice overrides him. I can and I am. You cross from witness to suspect the moment you involve my daughter. He pauses, letting the words land. And everything you say from this point forward will be used against you in court. That's not a warning. That's a promise. The gallery empties in tense silence. Only essential personnel remain, council members, stenographer, officers, cameras. Caprio waits until the last civilian exits before speaking. Chief Manuso, he begins, voice formal, now procedural. I am asking you directly under oath for this record, in this council, are you threatening these proceedings with retaliation? Manuso's eyes narrow. Define retaliation. Caprio doesn't hesitate. Using information about officials' families to influence their decisions. Manuso leans forward. I shared information. You're interpreting motive. Caprio pulls up another document, audio transcripts, phone records. 3 days ago, you called Councilman Torres at his home. Late evening. After his wife answered, you asked about his son's college application. He scrolls. 2 weeks ago, you mentioned Councilwoman Chen's mother's immigration status during a budget meeting. Another scroll. Last month, you asked Councilman DeMarco about his brother's contracting license, the same brother currently bidding for city projects. He looks up. All public information. All delivered with perfect timing, all designed to remind each person that you're watching. The pattern is undeniable. Manuso's face hardens. I maintain awareness of my community. Caprio's response is devastating. Community awareness doesn't require documenting security gaps at my daughter's workplace. He gestures to the screen where more transcripts appear. This isn't policing, it's stalking with institutional resources. Manuso snaps back. You're criminalizing diligence. Caprio fires back immediately. Diligence doesn't include blind spots in parking lots. The exchange has accelerated, voices rising, the confrontation spiraling towards something irreversible. Manuso stands abruptly. You want to know if I'm threatening this council? His voice fills the chamber. Yes, I am. The admission detonates. His attorney drops his pen. Council members recoil. Cameras zoom in. Manuso continues, voice steady, deliberate. I am reminding every person in this room that power runs both ways. You investigate me, I know where you live. You question my methods, I know your secrets. You try to remove me, I will release everything I've documented for 25 years. He spreads his hands. That's not a threat. That's mutually assured destruction. And I'm calling your bluff. The silence that follows is suffocating. Caprio stares at Manuso for a long moment, then does something unexpected. He smiles. Not warmth, not humor. The smile of someone who's just been handed exactly what they needed. "Thank you," he says quietly. Manuso frowns. "For what?" Caprio's response is almost gentle. "For confessing." He gestures to the cameras. "Everything you just said is recorded, witnessed, irreversible." He taps the screen where Manuso's statement is already being transcribed. "You just admitted to threatening public officials with information obtained through abuse of authority." Manuso's confidence wavers. "I was speaking hypothetically," Caprio cuts him off. "There is no hypothetical confession. You either threaten or you don't. And you did." He turns to the officers. "Chief Robert Manuso, you are hereby detained pending formal charges of witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, and abuse of office." Manuso's voice rises. "You can't arrest me." Caprio's response is final. "I'm not arresting you. I'm documenting your arrest. The charges will follow within the hour." He pauses, letting the moment breathe. "You wanted to demonstrate power. Congratulations. You just demonstrated how quickly it can be taken away." The officers move forward. Manuso's attorney is shouting objections, but they're drowned out by the reading of rights. The cameras capture everything: a police chief being detained in the same chamber where minutes ago he threatened everyone present. The irony is not lost on anyone. The man who claimed to decide what evidence matters is now becoming evidence himself. And the judge he threatened is now the one documenting his fall. The final question burning through every lens when the enforcer becomes the criminal who's left to protect the law. The officers are moving toward Manuso when a voice cuts through the chaos. "Stop!" Not shouted, stated, command voice. Everyone freezes. A man in the third row stands mid-40s, dark suit, utterly unremarkable until this moment. He reaches into his jacket and the room collectively holds its breath. What emerges is a badge. FBI. Special Agent David Brennan. He holds it up long enough for the cameras to capture every detail, then walks forward with the calm precision of someone who's been waiting for exactly this moment. "Judge Caprio," Brennan says, voice carrying easily through the stunned silence. "This hearing is now under federal jurisdiction." He doesn't ask permission. He states reality. Caprio's eyes narrow. "On what grounds?" Brennan pulls a document from his inside pocket, unfolds it with deliberate care. "Federal warrant for the arrest of Robert Manuso. Charges include wire fraud, conspiracy to obstruct justice, deprivation of rights under color of law, and witness tampering." He looks directly at Manuso. "Issued 4 hours ago. We've been waiting to see how far you'd go." The revelation hits like a physical force. Manuso's face goes from red to ash white in seconds. His attorney is frozen, mouth open, no words coming. Brennan continues, relentless. "This hearing wasn't just oversight, Chief. It was theater. We needed you comfortable enough to speak freely." He gestures to the chamber. "Every word you've said today has been recorded by federal surveillance. Every threat, every admission, every detail about your illegal intelligence network." He pulls out a small device from his pocket, a recording unit, light blinking red. "Including this, sitting 3 feet from you for the past 90 minutes. Manuso's eyes lock on the device. "That's inadmissible. I didn't consent." Brennan's smile is cold. "You're in a public hearing. Consent isn't required." He pulls out his phone, taps the screen, and suddenly the monitors fill with images. Photographs, surveillance footage, file directories. "While you were busy threatening Judge Caprio's daughter, my team was executing search warrants on your office, your home, and your personal storage units." The images scroll: filing cabinets being photographed, hard drives being seized, boxes being loaded into federal vehicles. "We've been building this case for 18 months. Today you handed us the centerpiece." Manuso tries to stand. 2 federal agents materialize from the back of the room, moving to flank him. Brennan doesn't even glance at them. "The Rodriguez evidence you deleted. We recovered it. The files you claim to have on public officials, we have those too, along with documentation showing you use federal databases without authorization to compile them." He steps closer. "Every illegal search, every abused subpoena, every piece of information you gathered outside legal channels, we have the digital fingerprints." Manuso's voice is hoarse. "I was protecting," Brennan cuts him off. "You were extorting." And you got sloppy. The attorney finally finds his voice. My client invokes his right to remain silent. Brennan nods. Smart. He should have done that an hour ago. He pulls out handcuffs, the metallic click echoing through the microphones. Robert Manuso, you are under arrest for violations of Title 18 United States Code. He begins reading rights, but Manuso isn't listening. His eyes are fixed on the monitors where his own words are being played back. Admissions, threats, confessions, delivered with arrogant confidence just minutes ago. The screens show timestamps, legal annotations, evidence tags being applied in real time. Every statement he made is being cataloged, weaponized, transformed from bluster into prosecution exhibits. Brennan finishes the Miranda warning. Do you understand these rights? Manuso doesn't answer. He's watching his career die on live television. Brennan pulls out the arrest warrant, unfolds it completely, and holds it up to the nearest camera. The document fills the screen, federal seal, visible signatures, clear charges listed in precise legal language. This warrant authorizes the immediate arrest and detention of Robert Manuso, pending trial on 14 federal counts. He reads slowly, deliberately, ensuring every word is captured. Count 1, conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law. Count 2, wire fraud in connection with evidence tampering. Count 3, obstruction of justice in the Rodriguez investigation. He continues through all 14 charges, each one landing like a hammer blow. Manuso's shoulders slump further with each count. The attorney makes a desperate play. This is entrapment. You engineered this hearing. Brennan doesn't let him finish. We observed a hearing. Your client chose to confess. He gestures to the transcripts still scrolling on screen. Nobody forced him to admit destroying evidence. Nobody coerced him into threatening Judge Caprio's family. He did that voluntarily, enthusiastically, and with cameras rolling. He pulls out another document, thick-bound official. This is the preliminary evidence file, 600 pages, compiled over 18 months of investigation. He drops it on the table with a heavy thud. Today's hearing added another 50 pages in 90 minutes. Manuso finally speaks, voice cracking. I served this city for 25 years. Brennan's response is ice. You served yourself. The city just happened to be your hunting ground. He nods to the agents flanking Manuso. They move forward, professional and efficient. The handcuffs click into place. The sound seems impossibly loud through the microphones. Manuso winces as his hands are pulled behind his back. This is a setup, he says, desperation bleeding through. Brennan shakes his head. This is consequence. We gave you every chance to stay silent. You chose confession. The agents begin moving Manuso toward the exit. His attorney follows, still protesting, but the words sound hollow now. Brennan turns to Judge Caprio. Your Honor, federal custody supersedes local jurisdiction. We'll be transporting the defendant to the federal courthouse for arraignment. Caprio nods slowly. Understood. Will this counsel receive copies of your findings? Brennan's expression softens slightly. You'll receive everything not classified. Your oversight identified the corruption. We just provided the handcuffs. He pauses. And Judge, your daughter has been assigned protective detail as of 20 minutes ago. 2 agents, armed. They'll remain until we're certain there are no residual threats. The revelation that Brennan planned even that far ahead sends another shock through the room. Manuso hears it too. His head snaps up, realization dawning that the FBI was always 10 steps ahead. Brennan continues, voice hardening again. Chief Manuso built his power on intimidation. He forgot that real power doesn't need to threaten, it just acts. He gestures to the monitors showing federal vehicles outside the building. While he was busy describing parking lot security gaps, we were securing those gaps. While he was cataloging vulnerabilities, we were eliminating them. He thought he was demonstrating strength. He was actually demonstrating why he needed to be stopped. The agents reach the door. Manuso turns back one last time, looking at Caprio. This isn't over, he says. Brennan's response comes before Caprio can speak. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. The doors close. The man who walked in claiming untouchable authority leaves in federal custody, hands, bound, career destroyed, legacy, reduced to evidence, exhibits, and legal precedent. The broadcast cuts to the control room, then back to the chamber. Caprio remains, standing, both hands on the bench, breathing slowly as the adrenaline drains. The council members sit in a stunned silence. Then quietly, at first, someone begins to clap. A single pair of hands, then another. Within seconds, the entire chamber erupts in applause. Not celebration, but release. The tension that's been building for 90 minutes, finally breaking like a fever. Caprio raises one hand and the applause stops. "This hearing is concluded," he says, voice steady again. "The record will reflect that Chief Robert Manuso was arrested on federal charges at 15:47 local time. All testimony provided today will be forwarded to federal prosecutors." He pauses, looking directly into the main camera. "Let this serve as notice: no position grants immunity from law. No badge provides license to threaten. No authority, local, state, or federal, stands above the Constitution." He closes the folder before him. "These proceedings are adjourned." The feed cuts to news anchors, their faces reflecting the shock of what they've just broadcast. Across the country, millions of viewers sit motionless, trying to process what they witnessed. A police chief arrested live on television. A judge standing firm despite threats to his family. The FBI revealing an 18-month investigation that culminated in real-time confession. The screens fade to black, but the questions linger. How many others are there? How long has this been happening? And most importantly, who's watching the watchers now? 72 hours after Manuso's arrest, the council reconvenes. Same chamber, same cameras, different atmosphere. Judge Caprio opens the session. This hearing addresses systematic failures that enabled Chief Manuso's conduct. We will hear from those directly affected. He looks to the witness table. "Officer Marcus Webb, please approach." Webb is young, 28, 6 years on the force. He sits, adjusts the microphone, and speaks without looking up. "3 years ago, I reported evidence tampering. Dashboard camera showed my partner planting narcotics during a traffic stop. I filed internal complaint number 2847. He pulls out a document. 2 days later, Chief Manuso called me to his office. Private meeting. He opened a file and read my sister's name, her address, where she teaches. Webb's voice stays flat, controlled. He said, "Your family must be proud of your integrity." Then he closed the file and waited. Caprio leans forward. "What happened to your complaint?" Webb looks up for the first time. "Lost in processing. The footage corrupted during transfer. My partner got promoted." He pulls out his phone. "I recorded the meeting. Against policy, but I needed proof." He plays the audio. Manuso's voice fills the chamber, calm, measured. "Officer Webb, your sister teaches 4th grade at Lincoln Elementary. Lovely school, safe neighborhood. I'm sure you want to keep it that way." The recording clicks off. Webb continues. "I understood. Report this, and she becomes a problem he solves." He looks at the council. "I've stayed silent for 3 years, until he was arrested. That's when I knew it was finally safe." Caprio's jaw tightens. "Do you know of other officers who experienced similar pressure?" Webb nods. "At least 6 that I'm aware of. We never discussed it openly, but you recognize the pattern. Someone files a complaint, gets called to the chief's office, and suddenly the complaint disappears." He pauses. "We called it getting filed, as in added to his collection." A council member interrupts. "Why didn't you report this to federal authorities?" Webb's answer is immediate. "Because I didn't know who to trust. He had contacts everywhere, mentioned them constantly. FBI agents he'd worked with, federal prosecutors he'd helped. I assumed his reach extended beyond the department." Caprio asks, "And now?" Webb straightens slightly. "Now he's in federal custody. Whatever protection he claimed doesn't exist anymore. That's why I'm here." Caprio turns to the council. Officer Webb's testimony establishes a pattern of witness intimidation using personal information gathered through department resources. He gestures to the recording. "This audio will be forwarded to federal prosecutors." He looks back at Webb. "You're dismissed, officer, and for the record, your courage is noted." The next witness is already standing, Maria Santa's construction company owner. She doesn't wait for formalities. 2 years ago, my company bid on the waterfront infrastructure project. Lowest bid, best credentials. She drops a folder on the witness table. 3 days before the contract decision, police raided our offices. Search warrant for OSHA violations and financial fraud. She spreads photographs across the table. Officers carrying computers. Yellow tape. Employees blocked from entering. They seized every hard drive, shut us down for 8 days. She pulls out the case closure document. Investigation concluded no violations found. No charges filed, no explanation for the raid's timing. Santos looks directly at Caprio. We missed the contract deadline. Bid went to Triton Construction, owned by Deputy Chief Morrison's brother-in-law. Caprio examines the timeline. The raid occurred May 3rd. Contract deadline was May 7th. Santos nods. 4-day window. Just enough time to eliminate our bid without appearing overtly corrupt. She produces another document. I requested a meeting with Chief Manuso, filed formal complaint about the timing. He was sympathetic, apologized for the disruption. Her voice hardens. Then he mentioned my daughter was applying to colleges, said law enforcement recommendations carry weight with admissions boards, asked if she'd applied to Boston University yet. The chamber reacts sharp intakes of breath, angry murmurs. Santos continues. She had applied to BU. I'd never told anyone at the police department. He shouldn't have known. She pulls out her phone, shows a screenshot. That night I received an email from an anonymous account. Subject line, supporting your daughter's future. The body was blank except for a link to my daughter's college application portal. Caprio's voice drops. Someone accessed your daughter's private educational records. Santos nods. The login timestamp matches the day of my meeting with Manuso. 2 hours after I left his office, someone viewed her application from an IP address registered to the police department. She hands over printed server logs. My IT consultant traced it. I have documentation. A council member asks, "What did you do?" Santos's laugh is bitter. I withdrew my complaint, told my daughter her essays needed work since she wouldn't be getting that recommendation letter. She spreads more documents. A 2-year timeline of inspections audits permit delays. Since then, my company has been randomly audited 4 times. Code enforcement visits every 3 months. Every permit application takes twice as long as competitors. She looks at the council. This is retaliation disguised as routine procedure, and it only requires one phone call from someone with authority. Caprio studies the pattern. These delays cost your business how much? Santos answers immediately. Estimated $340,000 in lost contracts and compliance costs. I can provide detailed accounting. She pulls out a ledger. Every random inspection, every delayed permit, every unexpected audit, I documented everything. Because I knew someday I might need proof. Courtroom. Before Caprio can call the next witness, a man stands in the gallery. Daniel Ortiz, Providence Journal reporter. I have relevant testimony. Caprio nods. Approach. Ortiz walks forward holding a flash drive. 4 years ago, my newspaper investigated corruption in the police department. We had 3 sources, documented evidence, ready to publish. He sets the drive on the table. Then Chief Manuso invited our editor to lunch. Private conversation. The investigation was killed that afternoon. I was reassigned. Every source stopped talking. Caprio asks, "What's on the drive?" Ortiz answers, "The unpublished articles, interview transcripts, source documents, everything we gathered before the shutdown." He pauses. "And recordings of phone calls where sources explained why they were recanting. Each one mentioned family members by name. Each one referenced information they'd never disclosed publicly. Each one said they'd reconsidered their accusations. The drive is connected. Files appear on the monitor's article drafts, witness statements, photographic evidence." Ortiz points to one document. "This interview is with Officer James Chen. He described watching evidence disappear from the system. 3 days after we recorded this, he called to recant. Said he'd been mistaken about the dates." Ortiz plays an audio file. Chen's voice shaking. "I need to correct my previous statement. I was confused about the timeline. Also, I'd appreciate if you don't mention my daughter's scholarship application in any publication." Ortiz stops the playback. "We never mentioned his daughter. We didn't know he had one. Someone told him we did, someone who wanted him to believe we were a threat." Caprio leans back. Classic intimidation tactic. Create the impression of omniscient surveillance. Ortiz nods. "Exactly. Once sources believed their families were vulnerable, they stopped cooperating. The investigation collapsed without anyone explicitly being threatened." A council member asks, "Why release this now?" Ortiz's answer is simple. Because he's gone. The man who could retaliate is in federal custody. His protection network is being dismantled. For the first time in 4 years, publishing this doesn't feel like signing my family's death warrant. He gestures to the chamber. That's what his system created, a city where journalists, self-censor officers stay silent, and business owners accept retaliation rather than risk worse consequences. Caprio addresses the council. We've now heard testimony from law enforcement, private sector, and media. Each describes identical methodology, personal information weaponized to induce compliance. He pulls up a summary screen. Officer Webb's sister threatened. Miss Santos' daughter's education leveraged. Mr. Ortiz sources intimidated through family references. He pauses. This wasn't occasional abuse. This was systematic operational doctrine. He stands. These testimonies will be forwarded to federal prosecutors as supplementary evidence. Additionally, this council will implement immediate reforms. A document appears on screen. Mandatory independent review of all evidence handling. Civilian oversight board with unrestricted access to department records. Federal reporting mechanism for misconduct allegations. He looks across the chamber. Implementation begins within 30 days. Non-compliance will result in federal intervention. The chamber erupts in applause, but Caprio raises his hand for silence. This isn't victory. This is exposure. The corruption described here existed for years because people were too afraid to speak. That fear was justified, we've seen the evidence. But fear-based governance ends today. He looks directly into the cameras. To everyone who stayed silent, you're speaking now, and we're listening. 6 weeks after the hearing, federal prosecutors convene a press conference. The room is packed, national media, local reporters, cameras from every major network. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Cross approaches the podium carrying a document so thick it requires both hands. She sets it down with an audible thud. This is the federal indictment against Robert Manuso. 147 pages, 38 counts. She doesn't open it. She doesn't need to. I'm going to summarize the charges that have sufficient evidence for prosecution. She begins reading. Count 1, conspiracy to deprive citizens of constitutional rights under color of law. The evidence shows Chief Manuso systematically destroyed exculpatory evidence in at least 19 cases between 2019 and 2024. She clicks a remote. The screen behind her fills with case numbers, dates, defendant names. Count 2, wire fraud. Chief Manuso used police databases to access personal information without investigative justification, then leveraged that information to influence civilian conduct. We have documented 43 separate instances. The list continues, each count supported by specific evidence. Email trails showing orders to delete footage. Phone records proving coordination with subordinates. Database logs revealing unauthorized searches of private citizens. Financial records demonstrating benefit received from suppressed investigations. Cross doesn't rush. She reads each charge with prosecutorial precision, letting the weight accumulate. Count 17, witness tampering in the Rodriguez case. Count 23, obstruction of justice in the Sullivan investigation. Count 29, using interstate communications to threaten Judge Caprio's family member. She pauses at count 31. This charge deserves special attention. Violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Chief Manuso used law enforcement databases to compile intelligence files on public officials, journalists, business owners, and private citizens. These files contain personal data gathered without legal authorization or investigative purpose. The screen shows a photograph filing cabinet seized from Manuso's home office. We recovered 17 filing cabinets, 4 external hard drives, 632 individual dossiers on Rhode Island residents. Cross pulls up a spreadsheet. Each dossier contained detailed personal information, family members' names, employment, history, financial data, medical records, educational information, travel patterns, personal relationships. She highlights specific entries. Judge Frank Caprio daughter's workplace schedule, vehicle information, security vulnerabilities. Councilwoman Chen mother's immigration status, pending citizenship application. Officer Marcus Webb's sister's address, employment daily routine. The pattern is undeniable, systematic, comprehensive, predatory. These files were not investigative tools, Cross states flatly. They were leverage inventories. Chief Manuso maintained them specifically to coerce compliance and silence opposition. She clicks again. The screen fills with email excerpts. In his own words from an email to Deputy Chief Morrison, knowledge is control. Document everything. You never know when you'll need pressure points. Another click. Another email. The Webb situation is handled. His sister's information was persuasive. He won't file again. Cross looks directly at the cameras. The federal government alleges that Robert Manuso operated a criminal enterprise under the guise of law enforcement. He weaponized public trust, abused institutional authority, and corrupted the justice system for personal power. She taps the indictment. If convicted on all counts, he faces a maximum sentence of 84 years in federal prison. She pauses, letting that number settle. But this isn't about maximum sentences. It's about accountability. A police chief who forgot he serves the law, not his own interests. Hano, the indictment triggers immediate consequences. Within 48 hours, the Rhode Island Attorney General announces a comprehensive review of every case Manuso touched. The press conference is brief, clinical. Attorney General Patricia Sullivan stands before a wall of boxes, case files stacked floor to ceiling. This represents 612 criminal cases processed during Chief Manuso's tenure, where evidence handling is now questionable. She gestures to the boxes. Each one will be re-examined. Convictions obtained through tainted evidence will be vacated. Defendants will be notified. Retrials will be scheduled where appropriate. The first overturned conviction comes within a week. Marcus Rodriguez, the case that started everything. His attorney files an emergency motion. Judge Caprio presides over the hearing personally. Rodriguez sits in the defendant's chair, 23 years old, already serving year 2 of a 7-year sentence. His public defender presents the evidence. Your Honor, the dashboard camera footage that was allegedly corrupted has been recovered by federal investigators. The screen lights up the missing footage, now crystal clear. It shows Officer Mendez approaching Mr. Rodriguez's vehicle without reasonable suspicion. The traffic stop itself was unlawful. The subsequent search violated Fourth Amendment protections. Caprio watches the footage without expression. When it ends, he speaks directly to Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, this court initially convicted you based on incomplete evidence. That evidence has now been revealed as deliberately suppressed. He pauses. The conviction is hereby vacated. You are released immediately pending the state's decision whether to retry. Rodriguez's face crumbles, not relief, but something more complicated. 2 years stolen, time that can't be recovered. Caprio continues, voice softer. This court apologizes. The system failed you. I failed you by not questioning the evidence gaps more aggressively. The moment is televised. Rodriguez walks out of the courthouse 3 hours later, ankle monitor removed, charges dismissed. Cameras capture everything, but the story doesn't end with freedom. His attorney holds a press conference. Marcus Rodriguez spent 2 years in prison for a crime where the chief evidence was police testimony contradicted by footage the police deliberately hid. She pulls out a civil complaint. We are filing a federal lawsuit against the city, the police department, and Robert Manuso personally for malicious prosecution, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. We're seeking $8 million in damages. The floodgates open. Within 2 weeks, 17 more convictions are overturned. Each one follows the same pattern. Evidence, disappeared testimony, contradicted by recovered footage, convictions based on incomplete records. Each defendant released, each one filing civil suits. The city's legal liability grows exponentially. The mayor holds an emergency press conference. The potential civil damages exceed $40 million. The city's insurance will not cover intentional misconduct. We face bankruptcy unless we reach settlements. But the human cost can't be measured in dollars. Trevor Washington released after serving 4 years of a 10-year sentence for assault. His mother died while he was incarcerated. He missed the funeral. Maria Gonzalez, convicted of drug possession based on evidence later proven planted. She lost custody of her children. They were adopted by foster parents. The conviction is overturned, but the children are gone. Each case a life derailed by systematic corruption. Each overturned conviction revealing new depths of institutional failure. The fallout spreads beyond Manuso. Federal investigators expand their scope. If the chief maintained this system for years, who helped him, who knew and stayed silent, who enabled the corruption through complicity or willful blindness? The first domino falls 12 days after the indictment. Deputy Chief Morrison resigns. No press conference, no statement, just a terse resignation letter citing personal reasons. Within hours, federal agents execute a search warrant on his home. The local news captures it, live boxes being carried out, Hard drive sees Morrison standing in his driveway in handcuffs. The U.S. Attorney issues a statement. Deputy Chief Morrison is being charged as a co-conspirator in the evidence tampering scheme. Email records show he received direct orders from Chief Manuso to delete footage, suppress reports, and maintain surveillance files on civilians. The evidence is damning. Morrison's own emails recovered from department servers. Completed as requested, Rodriguez footage deleted. No backup exists. Another email. Webb's sister information updated in the leverage file. He won't be a problem. Morrison wasn't just following orders. He was architecting the system. 3 more officers are placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Then 7. Then 12. Each one connected to specific cases where evidence vanished. Each one with access to the systems Manuso corrupted. The department begins to implode. Officers call in sick rather than face questioning. Others resign preemptively. The union issues a panicked statement. The actions of Chief Manuso do not represent the dedication and integrity of rank-and-file officers. But the damage is done. Public trust has collapsed. Every conviction, every arrest, every piece of police testimony is now suspect. Judge Caprio convenes an emergency judicial conference. 53 judges from across Rhode Island attend. The meeting is closed to press, but the directive that emerges is unprecedented. Effective immediately, all cases involving evidence handled by Providence Police Department between 2018 and 2024 will receive automatic evidentiary review. Defense attorneys may request independent forensic examination of any digital evidence. Chain of custody documentation will be verified by third-party auditors. The order essentially presumes corruption in thousands of cases. The legal system grinds to a halt as every conviction gets scrutinized. The city council holds its own emergency session. Councilwoman Chen, the same one whose mother's immigration and status Manuso weaponized, introduces a resolution. The council formally apologizes to every person victimized by the systematic corruption in our police department. We commit to full transparency, complete cooperation with federal investigators, and comprehensive reform. The vote is unanimous, but the political consequences are just beginning. The mayor's approval rating drops to 18%. Protesters gather outside City Hall demanding resignations, not just of police officials, of every elected leader who failed to stop Manuso despite years of warning signs. FBI agent Brennan appears on national news. The interview is brief, but his message is clear. This wasn't one corrupt cop. This was institutional failure. Chief Manuso operated openly for years. People knew. Some helped. Others looked away. The question now is how deep the complicity runs. He pauses, looks directly at the camera. And we're going to find out. Every person who enabled this system will be held accountable. That's not a threat. That's a promise. The investigation continues. The consequences multiply. And the question lingers in every courtroom, every precinct, every city office. Who knew and when did they know it? 3 months after Manuso's arrest, Judge Caprio returns to the same chamber where it all unfolded. The hearing is closed. No witnesses, no testimony. Just the judge, the cameras, and a message he needs to deliver directly. He sits at the bench, looks into the main camera, and begins without preamble. On September 14th in this chamber, a police chief confessed to corrupting the justice system he swore to protect. He did it openly, proudly, without shame. Caprio's voice is steady, measured. But Robert Manuso didn't act alone. He operated for years because people knew and said nothing. Officers witnessed evidence tampering and stayed silent. Supervisors noticed patterns and looked away. Officials received warnings and buried them. He pauses. This wasn't one man's corruption. This was institutional complicity. He pulls up a document, the final investigative report. Federal prosecutors have now identified 47 individuals who participated in or enabled Chief Manuso's criminal enterprise. 18 have been charged. 12 have resigned. The rest remain under investigation. He looks directly at the camera. But charges don't erase the damage. 17 people served prison time for crimes where evidence was fabricated. 6 lost custody of their children. 23 businesses were destroyed through targeted harassment. And one officer, Marcus Webb, lived in fear for 3 years because he tried to do the right thing. Caprio's expression hardens. Those consequences are permanent. We can overturn convictions, but we can't restore lost time. We can award damages, but we can't rebuild destroyed lives. Justice delayed is justice denied, and in these cases, justice was actively sabotaged by the people sworn to uphold it. He leans forward, voice dropping, but somehow carrying more weight. Some of you watching this believe it couldn't happen in your city. You trust your police. You respect your institutions. You assume accountability exists because the system claims it does. He shakes his head slowly. That's what we believed here. Providence had oversight committees, internal affairs, divisions, civilian complaint processes. All of it failed, not because the structures didn't exist, but because people chose silence over action. Caprio pulls up testimony excerpts, Officer Webb, Maria Santos, Daniel Ortiz. These people tried to speak. They filed complaints. They followed procedure. They trusted the system to protect them. He pauses. Instead, the system protected their abuser, because silence is easier than confrontation. Complicity is safer than courage. And institutions only work when people inside them choose integrity over convenience. He looks back at the camera. To everyone who knew something was wrong but said nothing, you weren't neutral. You were complicit. Silence doesn't protect you from corruption. It enables it. His voice sharpens. Officer Webb filed complaint 2847 3 years before anyone acted. That complaint should have triggered investigation. Instead, it triggered intimidation. Someone received that complaint and buried it. Someone saw the pattern and ignored it. Someone had the power to stop this and chose not to. Caprio's jaw tightens. Those someones are as responsible as Manuso himself. Because corruption doesn't survive in daylight, it survives in silence. In the space between knowing and acting, in the gap between witnessing and reporting, that gap, that silence, is where democracy dies. He stands both hands on the bench, final words delivered with absolute conviction. This case proves something essential about power. It doesn't corrupt accidentally. It corrupts when people allow it. When officers stay quiet, when officials ignore warnings, when citizens assume someone else will act. He pauses, letting the words settle. Robert Manuso built his system on a simple calculation. People fear consequences more than they value truth. He was right until he wasn't. Caprio looks directly into the lens, speaking not to the council, but to every person watching. The law doesn't enforce itself. It requires people willing to defend it when it's inconvenient, dangerous, or costly. People like Officer Webb, who risked his career. Like Maria Santos, who documented retaliation. Like the FBI agents who investigated for 18 months in silence. His voice drops to barely above a whisper, but every word cuts clean. The law only exists when people have the courage to protect it, even from those who wear badges. He picks up his gavel, holds it for a moment, then sets it down without striking. This hearing is concluded, but the work of accountability never ends. Stay vigilant, stay vocal, and remember, silence isn't safety, it's surrender. The camera holds on his face for 3 seconds, then cuts to black. The Caprio-Manuso hearing reveals a truth we can't ignore. Power unchecked doesn't corrupt slowly, it corrupts systematically. Officer Webb waited 3 years to speak because fear felt safer than truth. Maria Santos accepted retaliation rather than risk worse. How many times have you witnessed wrongdoing, but stayed silent, calculating that speaking up costs more than staying quiet? Here's your action question. What would you do if you saw corruption today? Would you be Officer Webb filing complaint 2847, or the person who buried it? This video is created for educational and inspirational purposes under fair use, not to defame or attack any individual. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. It means the world. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share so more voices can join this journey. Until next time, stay strong, stay awake, and I'll see you in the next video.